Hi everyone, and welcome back. Today, after about 4 months, we finally got back our reconditioned visors for these headlights. So these were sent off to a local place that coated these for us again, and they came out fantastic. There was a lot of work that had to be done to these before I could send them out. A lot of these needed new holes drilled in them, the old holes filled, and just a little bit of metal work on the inside of some of these. But this is what a visor looks like. The point of this is the light bulb would be in the middle, and this would reflect the light out so they could see ahead of them with the headlight. So we're gonna put this in the tender, on the tender's headlight, and get that completely done. And I'm really excited to see how this is gonna come out. I also wanna take a couple minutes. I'm gonna go inside the shop. I have an engine in there, the A5 and 040 94, that has one of these before it was reconditioned. I'm gonna bring this in. I wanna put them side by side so you can see just how amazing these look. These came out fantastic. So I ended up bringing the unfinished reflector out to the shop, and you can see on this one just how tarnished and non-reflective it is. After years of just being out in the elements, it's dull and it wouldn't reflect light very well. So it gives you kind of an appreciation of just how good comparatively the two look. I mean, you can see this one, I can almost see my reflection in, whereas this one has a dull finish. And one of the things that I think some people sometimes don't understand, and that's okay, is that when equipment was donated to the museum, it was at the end of its service life. So a lot of times it was in bad shape when it was donated. Now, a lot of the things have sat outside for many years and they've gotten worse since then. But a lot of things we get, people think that they were donated in good shape, and they really weren't. And they would have taken a lot of work at the end of their life to keep them going had they not been retired. And you can kind of relate it to if they're not gonna, at the end of something's life, and we did this in the diesel shop where I worked at, for the locomotives, you're not going to spend a lot of money to keep something running if you know it's going to be retired shortly. A lot of railroads would run things until their service life was over, and they'd be like, we're not putting any money into this because at the end of the month or when this blows up, we're done. We're not going to put any money into it. And as much as people don't like to think about it, steam locomotives were no different. Many of them at the end of their careers were running on borrowed time to begin with and were in bad mechanical shape. So that's something that we'll see going forward. You'll see a lot of things that haven't been touched in 80, 60 years since it was retired that should have been addressed that never were, that now we have to. So I'm up here on the back of the tender with the headlight. This is a reproduction headlight. So I made this from some existing parts from the original headlight, and then a lot of it's new. And in a video series coming up, I'm going to show the whole process of making one of these and why we have to. So one thing quick just to get into it, these are made out of very thin metal. They're like 16th thick. So these didn't do well in the elements. And figure if you have soot falling down on them, by the time we got a lot of these headlights, they were in rough shape. So pretty much any of the engines in the museum that are getting restored that have these older big golden glow headlights with tin plate are going to need a new headlight. So there are the later ones that were all cast that didn't have that problem, but these old ones were really, really prone to rusting out. So I'm going to open this up. So when I made this last winter, it has the provisions already inside of it to mount the visor in it. So I have the screws, they're all tapped and ready to go. I'm going to back them out quick, and we're going to fit this visor in place. So top tip, I painted the inside of the headlight. I painted this a while ago, but when I painted it, I ran the screws in to where the nuts are to mount this visor in place. And the reason I did that is so when I painted it, I didn't get paint in the threads and the screws could get stripped. These are only, a lot of this old stuff, which I think is kind of cool, a lot of the old stuff, they used brass screws. So brass being a softer metal, it's going to tend to strip out way easier than even a normal steel screw will, which is saying something because steel screws like to strip like crazy anyway. But I did that so we'd be ready for this and we could mount this up nice. One other cool thing, and I'm going to talk more about it in another video, but you were actually able to adjust the direction of the headlight. So there's a little mechanism in here that if you turn it, it angles the light up or down, so you could actually adjust and fine tune the positioning of your light. It's like running your headlights in your car and they're pointing the wrong way. It doesn't work too well. These had the same thing, which is really cool, and all you had to do was turn it up or down, and it's on a cam, so it's going to adjust itself accordingly. Pretty neat. So I had to cut away because I ended up grabbing one of the wrong ones. I actually have 7 of these that got redone. So in anticipation of getting all the engines done one day, we went ahead and did as many of these as we had, which included a few extras. But this one I had the holes drilled in it already to match this specific one. Unfortunately, part of the challenge in remanufacturing this stuff is that it can be difficult with me having to do it instead of like machines and dies and everything. I have to like make this specifically fit this. So these holes on this one are only going to fit this one just because of how I drilled them, because I'm not a machine. But that's okay. No one will notice. Got this close to where it needs to go. Now, one thing you can kind of notice is that this opening is bigger than this, and that the reason being is you can twist it. So this will spin on a cam, so it won't spin evenly in a circle. So this has room where if you spin it, it can go somewhere and it won't hit this, which I think is really cool. So there's 8 screws that need put in place with this. Now I aligned this up before I sent it out. All the other ones I don't have the holes drilled in yet. I have one hole just to center it, and then I'm going to drill the holes as I go because it's much easier to, when you're lining up many little holes, to just fit them up as you go instead of laying it out and drilling it. If you're pretty good, you can do it, but just starting out or doing something like this, it is almost impossible to get all 8 of them to line up. So they're very close. I'm going to start one screw, and then I'm going to use a small pin bar and just kind of move this a little bit on the bottom just to line it up so it goes in place. All right, so that is the visor in this headlight. The only thing that we're still missing is the piece of glass that would go in front of it. We have them cut and ready to go, but it doesn't make sense to put that in when it's going to be painted around. So we're going to just tape the front of this and then put a bag over it pretty much. We'll end up putting a bag of tape in the front. And then after it comes back, the last thing we'll do is put the glass in. But overall, this came out pretty good. If you don't look at it close, you can't tell it's a reproduction. So that was our goal. But I will see you next time, and thank you for joining me.